Tennessee's bowl practice starts Friday. That leads us to today's tough question.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Today's tough question is currently on our YouTube page as a poll. So, a little narrative here. Visiting with Jacob Warren yesterday, and I'm asking, what's with Joe Milton's decision? Because if I were him, I would leave. And I wrote that column, and people just read the headline and said, "Oh, you're telling Joe to get out the door." No, I wasn't saying that at all. What I was saying that it doesn't benefit Joe Milton to participate in the Citrus Bowl against one of the better defenses in the nation. Even if he goes out there, let's say he has a fine game, 14-24 for 200 yards would be a fine game against this defense. What does that really say about Joe Milton? Not much. It's just that he's a good quarterback and he had a good day. Maybe he needs more preparation, and that's why he played well against Clemson. But there's a chance he could go out and be 8 of 20 for 120 yards against this defense, Caleb, and that hurts him. So now he's viewed as a guy with an awful lot of upside that lacks some, and I'm going to use this word in a very different way, that lacks some talent when it comes to passing the football. I'm not saying running. I'm not saying jumping. I'm not saying he can throw the ball 90 yards, but lacks some passing ability, passing talent that coaches can work on. What changes if he plays in the Citrus Bowl? So today's tough question brought to you by Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. I'm not going to ask you if he should play because he shouldn't. I'll go ahead and tell you that. I'm going to ask you about Nico and what if Joe Milton decided not to play, what that would mean for Tennessee's program playing in the Citrus Bowl. It's brought to you by Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Best prices, best service in the biz. It's Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. You absolutely cannot beat him in Knoxville for over 40 years of experience in that office. All right, so the question is, and you can vote on YouTube, but we want to get your thoughts as well as we move along here. What would be the Vols' response to Nico starting the Citrus Bowl? Okay, now these are the players. And I'm visiting with Jacob Warren yesterday, and he said, yeah, sure, I'd like to play with the kid. So I used that as one of the choices. Fired up to play with the kid. Oh, no, Joe. In other words, players wouldn't like that. Or let's ride. I mean, whoever's going to play is going to play. So those are your three choices. I want to hear it on the message board. I want to hear from you. I want to hear you vote right now on the poll. Today's tough question brought to you by Andy Mason Real Estate, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. What would be the Vols' response to Nico starting the Citrus Bowl, which would mean Joe Milton skipping the final game of eligibility he has as a college player? And that's a lot considering he began in about 1948. So given those three choices, Caleb, what would you go with?
I would say it would be let's ride. And the reason I would, but for a specific reason. Have you followed this team the last 3 years, anybody? Tennessee's approach to everything has been let's ride. I don't feel like their emotions change week to week depending on the game they play. Have you noticed that, Dave? It just doesn't seem like they seem to be one that has the same approach for every game, don't they?
Yes. If you want to take South Carolina, I would take that out of the equation.
Yeah, there are a couple of exceptions. Like this year, they were all in on making sure they blew out South Carolina, and you had the inside. You knew why Vegas set that line so high. I didn't understand it at the time, and you were like, the line should be higher. I should have. Dave, you're not even a good friend. You should have told me to take money on the alternate spread in that game secretly.
I don't want to be wrong and cost you money.
You are not a good friend, Dave, and so I could have made a lot of money off that one. But so you're right. Outside of that. It's not like, look, whatever. This was a problem with the Fulmer era. And it's funny, we're going to talk about Heupel versus predecessors. Fulmer could not keep his team emotionally consistent week by week, could he? They would give really up to play Georgia. They'd be really tight for Florida. But then
it's funny, he mentioned that in terms like magic dust. You remember his term, you can't sprinkle magic dust on the team every time to get them to play their best. Interesting that you would say that. Yes, they were a little up and down. Great point.
Yes. And Josh Heupel I think Josh Heupel's dead serious when he said it's the biggest game because it's the next game. He approaches every game like it's the biggest because it's the next. Alabama, MTSU, Austin P, it's the biggest because it's the next. And I think Tennessee has really gotten that approach down. Now, I don't know if that's good or bad. I don't know if you want your players to turn it up a notch when they play more elite teams or under the lights, but I think because of that, this Tennessee program has a very business-like approach to every game they play. And I think that's because of that, they'll be let's ride, no matter who starts.
I love you, but I completely disagree. I think it is hands down fired up to play with the kid. I think it would not only inspire Tennessee's players who could come up flat in a Citrus Bowl game, just a weird feeling from covering bowl games, no insight, but I just got a weird feeling this could be a flat showing. We'll see. I think it would be fired up to play with the kid. Vote on YouTube. 31% now fired up to play with the kid. Let's ride, which is just go with whoever's starting. Gaston, jump in there, would be 62%. And oh no Joe just gets 8%. So
they agree with me. The audience agrees with me. They're like, Caleb is so smart. They're like, Caleb is so much smarter than Dave.
They do. But you just admitted I could have made you a lot of money with some information. I probably could have a couple of other times as well.
That is true.
Here's the other thing too. I just think he's better. I mean, I'm to the point where with the 20 pounds, with the practice, I think he gives Tennessee a better chance to beat Iowa and play really well. I think they've got a great chance to beat Iowa anyway, and probably will in ugly fashion with Joe Milton if he's a starter. I think they have a better chance to have a great offensive showing with Nico. I mean, as of today, right now, I think Nico makes them a better football team with another month to prepare. The thing that stuns me is that this is all just kind of flown under the radar. I mean, are we expecting a decision from Joe Milton, or is he just going to show up to practice on Friday? Is that not a little odd to you?
Yeah, this is that's what's so weird about this is you wonder like when do players have to announce that they're going to play in the bowl game? You know what I mean? And like that's what's so weird about this era. Last year, players were opting out at the most random times, and bowl practice was well underway. Do you remember this, Dave? Jeremy Banks announced he was going to opt out Christmas Eve, and
it's a good news dump day.
Yeah, right. Well, he did that because he did that because he didn't want to be in the news. He wanted to quietly exit Tennessee, knowing.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I mean the only better news dump day than a Friday afternoon is Christmas Eve.
It's Christmas Eve. Yes, exactly. I mean, Santa Claus was already in the air, okay? He was already dropping presents, and Jeremy Banks is like, guys, I'm not going to play in the bowl game. He wanted the quietest exit from Tennessee possible, and honestly, it really kind of shows his intangibles and, quite honestly, level of intelligence to not think we were still going to be able to get a hold of that and cover it. He doesn't know how online vol media works.
Very true.
So, but again, bowl practices were well underway at that point. Was he practicing with the team and nobody knew? Or, these are the questions that we asked. Now, Josh Heupel doesn't open the practices up, right? So you can't really see.
There's not going to be any open portions on Friday. That makes me think, and nor Saturday or over the weekend. That makes me think that Joe Milton is not going to participate in the bowl game. Hunch. Don't call me out on it, guys, if he ends up playing. But, I mean, you have no open portions. Doesn't make much sense to me. I think that Tennessee would be inspired and play better with Nico than with Joe. And I mean, no offense to Joe. And I know some of his family members watch our videos, and I think your son's done a great job. But I think it's time for him probably to move on.